Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Discovery. I'd like to thank Project Inspire for presenting this very special program. The Discovery Seminar has been watched by tens of thousands of people around the world over the last 20 years. I hope you enjoyed the first two presentations of Yaakov Solomon and Rav Gav, two very funny senior lecturers here at Torah. I want to explain to you, my name is not Sarah, my name is Max Anteby, happens to be my daughter's computer, and I'm going to be presenting tonight there you have it, the codes of the Bible. Let's go back and review what you learned in the first session. We have a document, it's the Bible. We want to know, how did we get it? Is it real? Who sent it? Who is the author? So we go through the same methodology that the Mossad did, 5 different methods that we used. One of them is called the Bible codes. How does that work? Let's say we have a spy in Tehran, in Iran. We know, unfortunately, that the Iranians are building numerous nuclear reactors. And our spy is there, and he sends us a message, sends us a little picture postcard showing downtown Tehran. You turn it over, and it says, "Dear Mossad, the Iranians are building a nuclear reactor. I could shut down the radar 1,200 hours. You can send in your plane at 1,400 hours. We could knock out the reactors, return victorious. Love, your loyal spy." Is anybody going to believe a message like that? No. It has to be written in a code. And there's certain different types of codes. The standard codes we all know is where one letter stands for another letter. But there's a different type. It's called a global code, where, for example, you have a whole paragraph. And you take the first letter, and then you skip, for example, 20 letters, and you take that one, skip another 20, another 20, another 20, and you put all those letters together, and it spells, Meshugana. That's a global code. We're going to be looking at different patterns and codes in the Bible. And we want to know, is it real? Is it something that was done intentionally, or it's a random occurrence? Now, when you see these codes and these patterns, many different questions are going to occur to you. Why was it done? How is it done? Why does the letter go upward? Why does it go sideways? Why does it go backwards? Why is it so many letters? Why does it start from this word? Why does it start from that word? What does it all mean? These are all very, very important questions. But as you see these various patterns and codes, there's only one thing, one question you need to ask yourself. And this is it. Is it random, or is it design? Is it random? Meaningless, just a coincidence. So easy to do, like looking at the side of a cereal box and looking for words. Or was it done intentionally by the author of the Bible, whoever that was? So let's define, what is the difference between random and design? I think you're all familiar with the game of Scrabble, yes? I see you nodding. Are you nodding? Yes, good. I can't really see you, but I imagine that you're nodding. Hopefully you're not nodding off. Game of Scrabble. I take all the tiles from the game of Scrabble, I put it into a brown paper bag, I put on a blindfold, I stick my hand in, and I pull out the letter E. Okay. I do it again, and I pull out the letter A. I do it a third time, and I pull out the letter U. 3 vowels in a row. What would you say that is? Is that random, or is that a design? I'd say it's random. There are enough vowels in the game of Scrabble. Chances are I just picked them out totally by accident. So now I put those 3 letters back in. I shake up the bag really good, stick my hand back in, and this time I pull out the letter W. Then I pull out the letter E. Then I pull out the letter L. Then I pull out a C, an O, an M, an E, and it spells the word welcome. And I do it more times, and I pull out the letters TODISCOVERY, all in a row. Welcome to Discovery. What would you say that is? Is that a random occurrence? Or was that done by design? Did I set it up, or did somebody else set it up that I would pull out those letters in a row, spelling the words welcome to Discovery? That's what we're going to look at. Are these patterns that we see just accidental? They're meaningless. They just happen to be there. Or are they so intricate? Are they so detailed? Are they so predictive of the future It could only have been done intentionally by the author. Now, codes is not something new that we just made up for Discovery Torah. Codes has always been part of our tradition. Rabbeinu Bachya wrote about it in the 13th century. In the year 1549, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, he wrote a book called Pardes Rimonim, and he said, all of the hidden secrets of the universe can be found through the use of the hidden codes of the Bible. Rabbi Michael Weisbandel, in the 1950s, he did unbelievable work manually on finding codes in the Bible. He took the entire book of Genesis, wrote it out on index cards, 10 letters on a row, 10 rows on a card, and he spent years and years counting numbers, counting letters. Nowadays, with the use of the high-speed computers, we're able to find things which have been hidden from us for thousands of years. So, if we're looking at the hidden nature of what's in the Bible, we're touching a little bit on Kabbalah, on mysticism, and we're going to be using what's called significant numbers. There are many significant numbers. Everybody knows the number 13, that's when you get bar mitzvah. Everybody knows the number 613, which is the number of commandments in the Bible. The number 26, which is God's name. And probably the single most significant number in the Bible is the number 7. And by extension, 7 times 7, the number 49. So what is the number 7? So obviously, Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He did it in 7 days. In a Jewish wedding, the bride walks around the groom 7 times. We recite 7 blessings. We are in the midst today counting the Omer, 49 days from the holiday of Passover into Shavuos, 7 times 7. The most significant number. So we're going to be looking at numbers, we're going to look at patterns, we're going to be looking at codes. Let's begin right away. And we're going to start off by looking at the work of a man named Ivan Panin. Now, Ivan Panin was not Jewish. He was a mathematics professor at Harvard University in the early 1900s, and he wanted to know if there are codes in the Bible. Being a non-Jew, he went to his New Testament, and what he found was that there are hundreds, literally hundreds, of authorized versions of the New Testament. So whatever he found in one version of it isn't necessarily going to hold true for any other version of it. So then he said, let's go to the Old Testament. So he started his research using the very first verse of the Bible. Now, for those of you who don't read Hebrew, don't understand Hebrew, don't worry about it. All you have to do is take a look at the patterns and count the numbers. So here we have, right now, the very first verse. I don't hear anybody saying anything. Must be nobody out there understands Hebrew because it's upside down. Here we go. Bereshit, bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Very famous verse. What he noticed, and the first thing you can notice, is that there are exactly 7 words. Once again, Kabbalistically significant number. If you take a moment and you count all the letters in the very first verse, you will see that there are 28 letters, a multiple of 7. You look at the 3 nouns. The 3 nouns of the verse are Elokim, God, Hashamayim, the heavens, Haaretz, the land. And he added up the numerical value. For those of you who know, we don't use the standard numbering system 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In Hebrew, every letter stands for a number. Aleph, Beis, Gimel is 1, 2, 3. Then you have Yod, Chaf, Lamed, 10, 20, 30. Then you have Kof, Resh, Shin, Taf, 100, 200, 300, 400. Those are the numbers. And that's how we write our numbers. So he looked at the numerical value of those 3 nouns, and it came out to be exactly 777. Obviously, a multiple of the number 7. He says if it works for the nouns, let's look at the verb. There's only one verb in this sentence, bara. Beis is 2, Resh is 200, Aleph is 1, 203, which is 29 times the number 7. He looked at the first and the last letter of the first and the last word. Once again, Beis is 2, Taf is 400, 402, Hey is 5, Sadi is 90, 497, 71 times the number 7. He looked at the first and last letter every word in the sentence, and it came out to be 1,393, which is 199 times the number 7. All told, Ivan Panin found more than 50 combinations of the number 7 in the very first verse of the Bible. They calculated that the odds of this being an accident, mathematically, is 1 in 33 trillion. That's a 33 with a lot of zeros after that. He went over to his colleagues, Harvard University, he challenged them. He says, come up with any coherent sentence, 7 words, 3 nouns, 1 verb, like Jack and Jill went up the hill, assign a numerical value to the letters, and try to come up with patterns of numbers. No one was able to even come close. What does this prove? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that Ivan Panin concluded was that, in fact, there are patterns in the Bible. As a matter of fact, if you look throughout the Bible, you will see that all of the main characters throughout the Bible are mentioned a multiple of 7 times. Who would you say is the most important character in the book? Obviously Moses, Moshe, Mem, Shin, Hey. His name, Mem, Shin, Hey, is listed there 357 times, which is 51 times the number 7. Who's the most important being? Obviously God. And God's name is listed there 1,820 times, which is 7 times 10 times 26, which happens to be the numerical value of Yod K Vav K. Throughout the Bible, wherever you look, you'll find these patterns of 7. Is that an accident? I don't know. I'll leave that up for you to decide. So, just to tell you a little bit about the Discovery Seminar. Sometimes there are actually 6 classes, which you'll be participating in if you take all of the classes. Sometimes we do it as a Shabbaton, Friday night to Sunday morning. Sometimes we do it all day Sunday. Sometimes we do it in a bridge version. Many times I would travel around the world, literally, and we would do Shabbaton. And sometimes afterwards, we'd all go out for lunch, discuss the wonderful, hectic weekend that we found, and then I get on the plane and come home. And while I'm waiting, we have lunch, I send a text to my wife, send her a little letter, and I tell her what a wonderful time I'm having. She says, are you eating lunch? I says, yes. Don't worry. What's your order? So I tell her, well, some people I visit order eggs and salad for lunch. Me, I had an omelet and a vanilla egg cream soda. This is a little letter that I wrote to my wife. Looks like a harmless little text, yes? Let me show you what is hidden within the text of this letter. I'm going to start with this letter S. And I'm going to skip 7 letters, and I'm going to come up with the letter P. I skip 7 letters again, I come up with the letter I. 7 letters again, the letter E, and 7 letters again, the letter S, and it spells the word spies. This is what mathematicians and statisticians call an ELS, an equidistant letter sequence. All that means is that the distance between the first and the second and third and fourth, et cetera, is equal within that word. Now, that jump can be 10 letters, could be 10,000 letters. It also works backwards. Let me show you. I start with this letter U. I count backwards 9 letters, happens to be the same letter S. I count backwards again. I come up with the letter E, and it spells the word use. Spies, use. Start with the letter C, count forward 8 letters, letter O, 8 more a D, 8 more an E, 8 more an S, and here, hidden in this very simple letter to my wife, spies use codes. This is what we're going to do. We are going to look for words which are hidden and coded into the actual text of the Bible as ELSs. Now, before we do, let's just confirm, how old is our Bible? Some people say that God looked in the Bible and created the world. Okay, 6,000 years. So historically, we know that our Bible was translated into Greek by the King Ptolemy of Egypt in the year 256 BCE. It's what's called the Septuagint. He had 70 rabbis translate word for word into Greek. So we know the text that we have today is at least 2,200 years old. Let's take a look at some of the words that appear to be encoded as ELSs in the text of this very ancient document. Before we do, 250 years ago, one of the greatest scholars in the history of Judaism, the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna, he wrote something in a book called Sifrat Tzniuta. This is what he says. The rule is, all that was, is, and will be until the end of time is included in the Torah from Bereshit, the very first verse, to El Kol Yisrael, to the very last words of Deuteronomy. Not merely in a general sense, but including the details of every species and of each person individually, and the most minute details of everything that happened to him from the day of his birth until the day of his death. What the Vilna Gaon is saying is that anyone, everyone who ever lived is alluded to somewhere in the Bible. Now I have a confession to make. Very first time I did this codes presentation, I made a big mistake. Not that I said the wrong thing. My mistake was I brought my wife with me to the presentation, and we gave the full-blown 2 hours, 2.5 hour codes presentation. We had 200 people there. It was unbelievable. She came over to me afterwards. She said, "Oh, Max, it was wonderful. I enjoyed it so much. I learned so much. But I have a question." I said, "Sure, honey. What's your question?" She says, "You mean to tell me that everyone is in the Bible?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "You mean to tell me I'm in the Bible?" I said, "According to the Vilna Gaon, yes, you are." She says, "And everything that I do is in the Bible?" I said, "Yes." So she says, "So you mean like American Express and Amazon and J. Crew and all that? That's all in there?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "So you see, I'm just doing what God wants me to do." Like I said, it was a mistake. That's why I travel by myself. So, Vilna Gaon says that everyone is there. But obviously, if you open up the text of the Bible, you are not going to find American Express spelled out in Hebrew letters. He means it's on a very hidden basis. So the students of the Vilna Gaon went over and they challenged him. They said, "Dear Rabbi, if everyone is included in the Bible, and certainly the greatest rabbi in the history of several hundred years has to be there." One of the greatest rabbis that we have was the great Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. He lived in the early 1100s. He wrote many, many books. He was born in Spain, spent most of his time in Egypt. He was a doctor, the physician to the Sultan. He wrote tremendous, powerful books. He did explanations of the Mishnahs and many other things. And his most famous work is the Mishnah Torah. The very first time was codification of the 613 positive and negative commandments of the Torah. So the students challenged him. They said, "Rabbi, if everyone is there, where is the great Rambam?" Without a moment's hesitation, Vilna Gaon opened up to Exodus chapter 11, verse 9. The portion of the Bible over here is speaking about the Jewish people going out of the land of Egypt, as we just experienced how they Passover several weeks ago. God had already brought 9 plagues on the Egyptian people. He's about to bring the 10th, and he goes over to Moses. He speaks to Moses, and he tells him, "Go and speak to Pharaoh and warn him about the 10th plague." However, Pharaoh is not going to listen to you. Why not? "In order that I may increase my wonders in the land of Egypt." According to the Vilna Gaon, here's where the great Rambam is alluded to. If you look at the first letter of the four words, Lebot, Moftai be'eretz Mitzrayim. Resh Mem Bet. Mem spells out the acronym Rambam. Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Jump forward 200 years. With the use of high-speed computers, we search all 79,976 words of the entire Torah. And this is the only place where you will find the acrostic Rambam appearing anywhere in the Torah. As we said, we just experienced this on the holiday of Passover. Hebrew date of the holiday of Passover is the 15th of the month of Nisan. And the day before, we know, is a very, very busy day for every Jewish woman, preparing for the Seder, cleaning the house, getting the matzah ready, and everything else that's necessary. Well, in the year 1035, Rambam's mother was just a little bit busier than everybody else, because that's the day that she gave birth to Rambam. Right in the paragraph, the only place where we find the name Rambam is his birthday. Arba'a Asar Yom LaChodesh Hazeh, the 14th day of the month of Nisan, his birthday. He wrote the book called the Mishneh Torah. Let's begin with the letter Mem from Moshe, and we're going to skip the Kabbalistically significant number of 49 and look at that 50th letter. We skip 49 letters, we come up, the next letter is a shin. Skip 49 letters, the next one is a nun. Skip 49 letters again, and the next letter is a hey. And it spells the word Mishnah, the first name of the book written by Rambam. So now we want to find the word Torah for Mishneh Torah. We count 49 letters more, we can't take the next letter, and unfortunately it comes out to the letter Lamed. However, if we skip down to the bottom, we will find the letter Taf, and again, the same jump of 49 letters next is a Vav, 49 letters the next is a Resh, 49 letters the next one is a Hey, and it spells Mishneh Torah. Now, what is the obvious question? Question is, why is there a gap? If we are saying that the author of the Bible intentionally coded in the name of the book, Mishneh Torah, in the only place where we find the name Rambam and his birthday, why did he put it one right after the other? Well, we asked ourselves the same question. And what we did was we went back and we counted the gap from the letter Mem of Moshe to the letter Taf, Torah. The gap is exactly 613 letters. Topic of the book, Mishneh Torah. So now I ask you, is this an accident? Is this random? Did this happen just by itself? Totally meaningless? Or was this done intentionally by the author of the Bible, whoever that was? But if you want to say that this was done intentionally, then that means at least 1,200 years before Rambam was born, the author had to know there was going to be somebody named Maimon. He would have a son. His name would be Moshe. He himself was called a wonder in the land of Egypt. He wrote a book of the Mishneh Torah. He has to code up all this information at the Kabbalistically significant jump of 49 letters, not missing the flow, one letter in the flow of the book that would change the world. Mathematicians calculated that the odds of this being accident is 1 in 3 million. What does that mean? That means I take all 79,976 words of the Torah and I mix them up and I print it out. And I mix them up and print it out again. And I mix them up and I print it out. I mix it up and print it out. I do that 3 million times. Only one time will I be able to have these codes by accident to have all this information. Hewlett-Packard has obviously the fastest printer in the world. We calculated that for that printer to print out all 79,976 words of the Torah would take 1,000,007 seconds. Let's say that Moshe Rabbeinu, had access to this HP printer. So there he is, leading the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt. He's got 600,000 souls waiting for him. He goes over to his tent, takes out his IBM laptop, sticks it under his robe, climbs up the top of Mount Sinai, and there, plugged in to the main power source, is this HP printer. He now plugs in his laptop and he says, "Okay, laptop, give me 3 million random printings of the Torah, 59,976 words." How long do you think it would have taken him? 40 days, 40 nights? It would have taken him 6 years, 9 months, and 21 days. He then has to spend the next year sifting through the 3 million manuscripts that rise 1.5 miles above the top of Mount Sinai, just to find the one version that has all these codes about the Rambam. He runs down to the Jewish people, patiently waiting for him. He says, "Hi, guys, sorry I'm late. I know I told you 40 days. I'm only 7.5 years late, but here it is, neatly collated, 3-hole punch with a staple in the corner. Here's the Bible. God just gave it to me." Ladies and gentlemen, that's the only way this is remotely possible that this was an accident. But then, when the mathematicians looked at it again, they say, "You know what? When we said 1 in 3 million, it's not really 1 in 3 million. Why not? Because when Rabbi Weissmandl did this experiment in 1950, as we said before, Rambam wrote many books. Maybe he looked for all of them, and the only one he found was Mishnah Torah. It's what we call hidden failures. So even though it's intuitively incredible, it's not mathematically verifiable. So what I want to do now is I want to show you codes that are both prophetic as well as statistically verifiable, which brings us to the work of a man named Doron Witztum. Doron Witztum was a physicist living in the land of Israel. He was an observant Jew, didn't believe that there was such a thing as codes. He thought he was a great guy to help us with our research. So we gave him access to the high-speed computers of Hebrew University at Technion. We said, "You got 6 months. We want you to find Bible codes." He did his research, printed a book, and he came up with these following Bible codes. Both predict the future and are statistically verifiable. He started his work at the end of the year, 1989, and at that time was the holiday of Hanukkah. So what he did was he defined in advance exactly what words he was going to look for. He didn't tell the computer where to look for it. All he did was give him the book of Genesis. That was the database. And they said, "Go and find it." So he's looking for the word Hanukkah. He's looking for Hashmonai, but that's the name of the family. He's looking for the hero of Hanukkah, of course, which is Yehuda Maccabee. He knows that we fought against the Greeks, that the holiday took 8 days, and it was on the 20th day of Kislev. He plugged in all these words. Again, he doesn't say where to look for it. So what does the computer do? So let's say it's looking for the word Ha-Chanukah. Why Ha-Chanukah, not Chanukah? Because there are many, Hanukkah means dedication, and there have been many dedications even in the recollections and history of the Bible. So therefore, we are looking for the holiday of Hanukkah. So what does the computer do? It starts looking for the letter Hey, and it goes Bereshit Bara, and finds the letter Hey. Good. Now I'm looking for the letter Ches for Hanukkah. And it goes, I'm not sure how many letters it skips. It says, okay, now I found the distance between a Hey and a Hanukkah and the Chet. Maybe let's say, for example, it's 22 letters. Now I skip another 22 letters. I'm looking for Noon. Nope, didn't look, didn't work. Okay, I go back to the letter Hey, and I have to look for the next letter Chet. And then I find it again, and I do it again. And I look for the Noon, and I do it again, and again, and again. And if I can't find any ELS with that letter Hey, I go to the next letter Hey. And you do it over and over again in all 80,000 words of the book of Genesis. Now, Hanukkah, or Ha-Hanukkah, may appear many, many times. What we're looking for is the smallest jump of the word Ha-Hanukkah. In other words, I may find it at a jump of 10 letters, 50 letters, 200 letters. I'm going to take that jump, one has 10 letters, and say, that is my starting point. Now I want to look for all those related words at the minimum jump of those words and see if they're coded in right next to the minimum jump of the word Hanukkah. Why is the minimum jump so important? Because the words can appear many, many times, and they can be all over the place. And if they're thousands of letters apart, it's not so significant. But if I find all of these words encoded at the minimum jumps right next to each other, the less likely it is that this is an accident. So take a look. Here I have the word ha-Chanukah, and the longest word that I have is Hashmonai, 7 letters, right next to the word Hanukkah of 6 letters. And if you look from the Yod to the Chet, is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 80,000 words, and I'm only 7 letters apart. He looks for the next word, and there he is, Maccabee, going right through the word Hanukkah. And of course, his first name is Yehuda. Obviously a minimum jump, it's only 1 letter. Yehuda Maccabee. We fought against the Greeks. The Hebrew word for Greek is Yavan. And the holiday lasted exactly 8 days. Chet Yamim. Look how close all these words are. Now take another look. This is 1/7 of the book of Genesis. And these words, if this was an accident, could appear absolutely anywhere, but they don't. They all appear in approximately 1/20 of 1/7 of the book of Genesis. Is that an accident? Was that done intentionally? Think about it. Hanukkah took place at least 100 years after the Bible had already been translated into Greek. There was no such place, no such people as Hashmonaim. There was no holiday. There was no holiday of the 25th of Kislev and the lighting of the menorah. Who knew all this information? Who coded it in and put them in at minimum jumps right next to each other? Is everything in the Bible? Very likely. Everything is there. Is the cure for cancer in there? Probably is, but we don't know what to look for. But we know about diabetes. We know the treatment for diabetes. First of all, the Hebrew word for diabetes is sakeret. Again, a jump of only 6 letters going backwards. And ELSs, as we saw before, spies use codes. ELSs are just as statistically significant frontwards and backwards. Diabetes is caused largely by malfunctioning of the organ called the lavlav, the pancreas. And we know that the treatment for it is something called insulin. Hebrew has a very interesting word for insulin. It's called insulin. You'll notice the jump is 3,300 letters apart. If you look at it, it appears that they're only 30 or 40 letters apart. What we do is we arrange the tableau so that we can read the words vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. We have snipped off the edges of the tableau, and there are actually 3,400 letters between the Aleph and the Nun and the Samach and the Vav, etc., etc. The interesting thing about this is that this is the only place in the book of Genesis where you'll find the word insulin right next to the word sakeret. The Gulf War. This goes back, about 40 years now. I think the first George Bush. The war between Saddam Hussein and the land of Israel and the Russian missiles called Scuds. It is a missile. In Hebrew, the word is Til. They were made by the Russians, going right through the word Til. And they were called Scuds, plural, Skodim. Here's the word Skodim I showed you before, and Til and Rusi. They were dropped on the land of Israel by a man named Saddam Hussein. And when did they fall? They fell on 3rd day of the month of Shivat, Yimal Shivat, January 18th, 1991. It's a very interesting story about this Gulf War. The government of Israel knew that there was such a thing called Bible codes, and they wanted to know if we could predict the future. Israel at the time was frozen, just like we are today with the pandemic of Corona. everyone in their houses, never knowing when the next Scud missile was going to fall. So they went over to the rabbis and they said, can you predict when these missiles are going to fall? And they said, you can't really predict the future. But they had found these codes. What they did was they plugged in 354 different dates of the year. And the only one that came close was Gimal Shabbat. Now people have asked, is there any relation between where you find the codes and what's actually written? Well, for those of you who are familiar with the Bible, you know in the time of Avraham Avinu, there was the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. And they engaged in a battle in the valley of Siddim, Emek HaSiddim, the Dead Sea. What do you know? And who did they fight against? Amraphel, the king of Shinar. Shinar, you probably don't know where it is today. It's changed its name a few times. It is the modern day city of Baghdad. The Holocaust. Berlin. The Nazis. Adolf Hitler, that very evil man, he ruled in the city of Berlin. There was another evil man who gathered together in concentration camps. The most famous one of them all was Auschwitz. I'm sure you all know his name. Be prepared for a shock. Going right through the word Auschwitz is the name of the man, Adolf Eichmann. Here's the Eichmann I showed you before. He had a secret weapon. What was his secret weapon? How was he going to wipe out the Jewish people in the crematoria? Before that, he gives them a gas. And the name of that gas was called Zyklon B, right next to the word Adolf Eichmann. Now, we've shown these codes to many, many people, to many audiences all around the world. People say this is frightening, this is unbelievable, this is incredible. But all these things happened many, many years ago. How do I know you didn't manipulate all of these letters, change the text of the Bible to suit your needs? Show me something that occurred in my lifetime that I know about, where I know that the Bible had already existed, the Chumash was in synagogue, you couldn't possibly change it. Show me something that I can relate to. So some of you might be familiar with this building that once existed in the city of New York. The Twin Towers, 9/11. Teomim, those are twins. Minimum jump, 1 letter. Teomim is towers. If you notice, only also a jump of 1 letter, 2 lines apart. On the 23rd of Elul, if you remember, was a time of Slichot. People were coming late to work, the Jewish people. It was just a few days before Rosh Hashanah. Some people say that the Twin Towers were knocked down by the descendants of Ishmael. Let me ask you a question, hard for you to answer. How many people died in the Twin Towers? 1,000, 20,000, 30,000? They don't really know, which is very interesting. You know why they don't really know? It's because many people showed up a few months later alive and well in different countries. So what the newspapers kept saying, that about 3,000 people died. About 3,000 people die. We know every day how many people around the world have died in the corona pandemic. We know it to the number, we know by country, we know by city, we know everything. How could we not know how many people died in the bombing of the World Trade Center? Very good reason. We asked before, where do these codes appear? Well, this is talking about the time of the building of the Golden Calf. And as we know, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he broke the tablets. He took the golden calf, ground it into dust, fed it to the people. And they told the tribe of Levi, go out and kill your brothers. Terrible thing happened. Vayipol min ha'am, and died in the camp on that day about 3,000 people. Kishloshet alfei ish. Exactly the words that the newspapers used is exactly word for word what is in the Bible thousands of years ago, about 3,000. Here's another look. The Hebrew word for jet is matos. Hipil, they knocked down. Migdalei hato'amim, the towers that are twin. Not once, pa'amayim, twice. And as a result, lamud sham. Many people died there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have many, many codes. We took them all and we showed them to people of, I don't think this is going to work. Bear with me just a moment. This is the tsunami that happened in Southeast Asia. If it works, it's extra. I'll talk in the meantime. We took all this information. We went to an organization that publishes a magazine called Statistical Science. We went to the Institute of Mathematical Statistics in Hayward, California. They have a board of directors of mathematical statistics, people from the CIA, the FBI, the US Army, US Navy, the US Air Force. They publish a book called Statistical Science. Let me show you this first, and then we'll get to that. Some of you might remember this terrible, terrible tragedy that happened in Asia. It was on their holiday, the 14th of Tevet, Asya, in Asia. Tens of thousands, I think 150,000, 200,000 people perished. They drowned in what's called a tsunami. For many of us, the word tsunami was new. The Bible knew about it many, many years ago. There we go. We took the information and we took it to the people of statistical science. There it is, equidistant letter sequences in the book of Genesis by Doron Witztum, Eliyahu Rips, and Yoav Rosenberg. And they looked at it and they said, incredible, mind-boggling. But we have a problem with it. We think that you rabbis are manipulating the data. We said, what are you talking about? Possible. So of course, sometimes you use 7, sometimes you use 49, sometimes you use 613, sometimes you use minus 262. You're picking any numbers that you want. They said, you cannot have any input into the data that's going to be used for this testing. Okay, how do we go about doing this test? So Doron Witztum said, let's go back to what the Vilna Gaon said. Everybody, all the greatest rabbis in the history of the Jewish people are alluded to somewhere in the Bible. So what we'll do is we'll give you a list of the greatest rabbis. And they said, no, 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 no. You can't choose them. You can't pick the names because, again, you'll show us only the ones you found and you won't show us the ones you didn't find, hidden failures. So we said, okay, what do we do? So what they said was, you go out and you get another source, get a book that lists all their names, you apply some criteria to it, and whatever fits those criteria, that is going to be the names of the rabbis that you're going to look for. So we found a book which is called The Great Men of Jewish History, the Encyclopedia of Great Men of Israel who lived from the 9th century to the 18th century. It's written by Dr. Mordechai Makuliot, 3 volumes. We gave it to them. They said, okay, this is a good source. So we said, how do we go about picking the names of the rabbis? So they said, okay, listen, anyone who has more than 3 columns written about him is considered a great rabbi. Goyim. Okay, what do they know? But included in that list was some of our greatest rabbis, like Rashi and Rambam, the Baal Shem Tov, and many, many others. So they said, fine, that will be the data that we use. But just to find their names, we're going to find everybody's name. We have to find something that's related particularly to them. So we said, once again, okay, they're all great authors. We'll give you the name of the book. And they said, no, once again, you can't have any input into the test data. So what do all these rabbis have in common over which we have no control? And the answer is they all have a yahrzeit date. They all died. And they're all very famous when they died. So that was going to be our experiment. We're going to look the names of these great rabbis, and we're going to match it up to the dates of birth and or death, because sometimes the dates of birth were not always known, especially if they lived hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Everybody knew when they died, not everybody knew when they were born. We took all that information and we performed the test. This is the reaction of the senior editor, Dr. Robert Cass, looking at the middle of the second paragraph. It says, our referees were baffled. Referee is not a guy with a black and white shirt with a whistle. These are world-class mathematicians. Our referees were baffled. Their prior beliefs made them think the book of Genesis could not possibly contain meaningful references to modern-day individuals. That means prophecy. Yet, when the authors carried out additional analyses and checks, the effect persisted. That means they couldn't disprove it. The paper is thus offered to statistical science readers as a challenging puzzle. Challenging puzzle? Not exactly a 1,000-piece puzzle, because this is world challenging. This is a list. There were 34 rabbis that made the list. As you can see, you have people there, the Ibn Ezra, you have the Tzemach Tzedek, you have the Taz, you have the Rabbi, the Maharal, you have the Bach, Tosafot, Rabbi Yonah, of course, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, the Reef, the Baal Shem Tov, many others. And you'll notice next to them, they have their different names. So, for example, the Vilna Gaon is known as Vilna Gaon, and HaGaon Vilna is also known as the Gerah. So we looked for all of their names, each one of them, and we noted their dates of death and or birth. Now, the dates of death can also be written several different ways. You have Chaf Tishri, Chaf Be Tishri, or Tishri Chaf. We looked at them in all different ways. Every way to look at it, we plugged in all this information. Let me show you just one example. Ha-Maharshal, Rabbi Shlomo Luria, who died Yod-Bet Kislev, the 12th day of the month of Kislev. And here his name is Shelomo, in the year He Shin Lamed Dalet. 34 rabbis, dates, their names, dates of death, and or birth. They looked at it. It was unbelievable. They didn't know what to do. They said it's incredible. How do they know how accurate this testing was? Because everything was defined in advance, a priori. There was no cheating. There was no going around it. Everything was defined. Everything was published. There was no way that the data could have been changed. But we're looking for what's called statistic significance. What is statistical significance? Anyone who's ever done statistical testing knows that if you do an experiment 19 times, when you do it the 20th time, you would expect to get exactly the same result. If you don't, it's still statistically significant. General scientific standard is 1 in 20, which means that the results you get are not as a result of a random occurrence. In matters of life and death, the New England Journal of Medicine said they require accuracy to the level of 1 in 100. When it comes to who is the author of this Bible that put this information in that seems to predict the future, the people of statistical science required a level of statistical accuracy of 1 in 1,000. 10 times greater than matters of life and death. This challenged their worldview. If this is correct, and this is not due to chance, that means God spoke to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai exactly what it says in there, that he wrote down a book that predicts the future with an accuracy of 1 in 1,000, or reliability of 1 in 1,000. We did the testing, and they weren't satisfied with the result that we got. They said, we want you to go back and test the data that you did already. And we want you to first mix up all the sentences and do it again. And the test results disappeared. Now I want you to take all the words within the sentence and mix them up. Did the experiment again. Results disappeared. Now take all of the words, 79,000, and mix them all up. We did that, and the results disappeared. They made us do these experiments 1 million times each. It took 6 years of testing. And when all of the results were in, the accuracy was not, reliability was not 1 in 1,000. Statistical significance was 1 in 62,500. Mind-boggling. They didn't know what to say. So they said, do it again. Repeat the whole experiment. We said, how can we do that? We already chose all the rabbis. They said, okay, go back to that book. Now take anybody who has between 1.5 and 3 columns written about them. Okay, so we did the experiment again. We did an entire series of different experiments. And when we did all of them over and over again, the results was not 1 in 62,500. It was 1 to 1.7 million. The people of statistical science conclude the proximity of words with related meanings in the book of Genesis is not due to chance. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's not due to chance, that means this was done by design. As I said, we have been showing these codes around the world for many years. There was a man named Harold Gans. He was a senior cryptologist for the National Security Agency here in the United States, and he didn't believe in Bible codes. He called Israel and he asked for the data. He says, they'll never give it to me because the whole thing is a sham. We sent it to him. He was very impressed. He did the experimentation on his own computer, did exactly the same thing, and he came out with almost exactly the same results. He was very impressed. He says, I want to do this. I want to take it one step further. He took all of these rabbis, the 34 rabbis and the 31 rabbis in the second test. And what he did was he plugged in the cities in which they lived. Now, let me ask you a question. If this was not correct, and this was a sham and was not the actual emet, if I put in more and more data about these rabbis and it's not accurate, we would expect that all this information would go away and the results would disappear. And the results only got better. Before we conclude, there are 2 questions that always come up in everybody's mind. They say, I've read so many places that the Bible codes aren't real. How do we know that they're real? How do we know that what you have just shown us this entire evening is real? That it's not just something that people made up at Torah and is very convincing, we sent it to you. So there have been several people probably at the forefront of that, Mr. Barry Simon and Brendan McKay, who have tried to debunk the codes. And one of the things they say is, listen, we found Hanukkah codes in War and Peace. It's true, it did, won't deny it. But there's a very big problem with that. You see, you can find codes in any document of sufficient length. You could look at your cereal box in the morning and look at the ingredients, and you'll find words encoded in the ingredients. The question is, was that just an accident? Probably it was. Just a coincidence. Probably not done intentionally. But when they looked at these codes in War and Peace, 3 major problems. Number one, the words that they found were not encoded at minimum jumps. So if you have a book several hundred pages long you're going to find these words many, many times. And what they found, close together with the Hanukkah codes, were not necessarily minimum jumps, as we did. Number two, the words that they picked were not necessarily related to the holiday of Hanukkah. If I show you the word prince, for example, is the first thought that comes to your mind, Hanukkah, as opposed to if I say Judah Maccabee is related directly to the holiday of Hanukkah. Prince is not. As far as I know, I hear the word Prince, I'm thinking of a rock and roll star, or I'm looking at a logo for a tennis team. The third problem is that what they found was not a priori. They did not define in advance what they were looking for. The biggest problem is, since they did not define exactly the words, it's the old classical story. You shoot the bow and arrow, wherever it lands on the tree, that's where you draw your bullseye. And that's what they've done. If you're interested in finding out all of these different theories saying that the Bible codes are not correct, please, I invite you, go to aish.com, put in the word Bible code, search it, and you will find an entire series there, pro and con. You will see all the arguments against it, or you can Google it on the internet. Second thing that everybody asks for, if the Bible codes are real, why can't we predict the future? Let's know. Let's find out, when is this coronavirus going to end? What does God have in mind? What's the actual outcome? When is Mashiach going to come? Who's going to be Mashiach? And as we've said before, unless an event is past, you don't know what to look for, because anything that you find could just be coincidental. Let's say you're looking for the cure for cancer. Is a cure for cancer in the Bible? Very likely it is, but what is it? So let's say you've put in the word machala, and we know that's a word that we use, this terrible disease of cancer. And you search everything, and going right through the word, the Hebrew word of cancer is strawberry cheesecake. Does that mean that's a cure for cancer? No, because maybe right next to the word for cancer is the word for Shavuos, and that's what we eat on Shavuos. So there's no telling what the future is going to be. But I want to know who's going to be Mashiach. Okay, let's look for Mashiach. So Mashiach is a small word. I plug it in and find it hundreds of places throughout the Torah. But then I find one which is the minimum jump. I see Mashiach spelled out. Now I want to know who's going to be Mashiach. And right through the letter Mem of the word Mashiach is the name Max Anteby. That's me. Does that mean I'm Mashiach? Does that mean I think I'm a Mashiach and nobody else does? It's just coincidental. Could be any other information about me happens to be there, and it happens to go through the word Mashiach. So predicting the future is not something that can be done.